So my talk tonight is on the heart practices, and I hope to offer you some new ideas about something you've probably heard a number of talks about over time. I heard John give a talk on this, and he said a lot of things I hadn't thought about, and I've been reading some new things about it, and I just have some what maybe they were new ideas to me, so maybe there'll be new ideas to you as well. And I'll talk for a little while and then we can have a discussion. So just to start with the basics, I have a list of the heart practices here, and I'll share my screen. And we'll just spend a moment going over what they are, because we want to learn how to develop our capacity to experience these. So these four emotional practices, not really emotions, they're more like states of being, but I'll talk about that. And they're very sublime states. So usually they're listed in this order: loving kindness, and I've put the Pali word as well because I always think it's good to have Buddhists like the Pali words, because everything came from 2,600 years ago in a pre-literate society and an oral tradition. So when translators come along, they may have their own agendas. A lot of Christian missionaries did translations of the Buddhist talks and that sort of thing. So by getting the Pali word, we can get a little closer to a pure understanding of what one of these words means. So metta is loving kindness, active good wishes for yourself, for another, benevolence, a warm heart. The word I like the most is friendliness. Love is such a complicated word in English, and so many meanings, and so probably not the best word to use, but friendliness is a really good word for metta. Just this openness and kindness to others and to yourself. And then compassion, often listed second, because it's really just metta for someone who's suffering. Karuna in Pali, good wishes for someone who's suffering, wishing that their suffering will cease, feeling their suffering as your own, but in a different way. When you feel someone else's suffering, you empathize, but you don't go down the tubes the way they may have. You experience it, you share it with them, but you stay present and mindful in karuna. The third one is mudita, sympathetic joy, or just plain joy. It could be any kind of joy, but specifically it was just the way compassion is loving kindness for someone who's suffering. Sympathetic joy is loving kindness for someone who's joyful. So these two are kind of parallel in a way, but any kind of joy that you experience falls here. And then the last one, equanimity, upekkha. The best translation is being with things as they are. It's an even-minded steadiness, treating everything and all points of view with an impartiality, just being very stable, Solomon-like, equanimity. And I've heard it said that equanimity is the highest human emotion, because when I first looked at this list, I sort of thought, why is equanimity on this list? All of the other ones are kind of loving feelings, but equanimity, I think I got it confused with indifference. So each of these has a near enemy, and the near enemy of equanimity is indifference. But it's very different from indifference. It's a state of balance. So if you go, I'm just going to set my recording here. I put myself in the spotlight, but if you want to go back into gallery view, you'll see everybody. So if you go on retreat at Spirit Rock, the 4 dormitories are named after these Brahma Viharas. I've stayed in Metta many times. I always like to stay in Metta. These four states are known by different names. They're most commonly called the Brahma Viharas. This list did not originate with the Buddha. It actually is a part of Hinduism. The Buddha was brought up Hindu. They didn't have Buddhism yet. So Brahma Viharas, Brahma is the supreme being, and a Vihara is a dwelling place. So Brahma Vihara translates to the dwelling place of the gods, the divine abode. You'll hear them called the divine abodes. It's a place for the gods to live, these four sublime states, a place for the gods to remain in. And truly, these are the most exalted states, the most beautiful states for human beings to reside in, the most pleasurable, the most helpful in all situations. I have a great quote from this great German monk and teacher, Nyanaponika Thera. He was Bhikkhu Bodhi's teacher, if you know Bhikkhu Bodhi. And let me just read you the quote. He's talking about the Brahma Viharas. They are the great removers of tension, the great peacemakers in social or political conflict, the great healers of wounds suffered in the struggle for existence. They level social barriers. They build harmonious communities. They awaken slumbering magnanimity long forgotten. They revive joy and hope long abandoned, and they promote human brotherhood against the forces of egotism. That's quite a recommendation. So a vihara, other names for the Brahma Viharas, I guess. A vihara is not just a dwelling place, it's also a term for a Buddhist monastery. Originally, it was a place, a secluded place, and maybe in the woods where the wandering monks could do their walking meditation. But today, a vihara is a Buddhist monastery. So you may have heard of the nuns in Placerville who live at Aloka Vihara. Aloka means brilliance, radiance, streaming out in all directions. So Aloka Vihara is a radiant monastery. Sounds worth a visit, huh? So Brahma Vihara is the divine abode, another term you will hear. And in our case, I think the point is that these are kind of the highest human capacities. Another term for them is the four immeasurables. They're sometimes described as emotions, and actually I thought of them as emotions for most of the time I've been studying Buddhism. But when I heard John's talk, I think I mentioned I heard John speak recently, he was saying very strongly, these are not just emotions, they're states of being that we can learn to enter and remain in. And we can learn that through starting with our insight practice, our concentration practices, and then the specific heart practices. We can enter these states, and these states are important to enter because they're transformative. Every moment we spend in these states changes us, almost like it's a physical change. And my personal experience is that spending time in a heart state lowers my general negativity. You've probably all heard me talk about my theory, this is not Buddhism, of the minimum daily negativity requirement, that each of us needs to have so much negativity in our day, and we will find it one way or another. And I believe that remaining in the heart states lowers that quotient so that we need less negativity and we become a more positive and happy person. So John Travis recommended that in practicing the Brahma Viharas, I always thought you started with metta because we do metta at the end of each meditation, but he said, start with equanimity. Now, to me, that sounded like the most advanced, the most difficult one to get to, but he said, no, this is your mind training. This is, can we bring our mind into a state of balance, a state of equanimity? And he said, we start with the first fold of the Eightfold Path, wise view, wise understanding. wise understanding is defined as accepting and fully understanding the three characteristics of existence. And they are, and I know you've heard this trilogy before, there is suffering in life, everything is impermanent, and the self is an illusion. There's no self. So these three kind of, they're very hard to hold, the three of them. But if you can hold them, if you can hold these three, if you can hold the suffering of humanity in your heart, if you can hold the idea that everything is impermanent, including oneself, and this idea of no self, which I can hardly understand, but I can try to hold on to it anyway. If you can hold those three, you enter equanimity. There's no other way to hold on to them. They're very difficult things to take in. So you have to enter a state of equanimity to hold the three marks of existence. So maybe that's a way to get into them, to think about each of those things and see if you can hold it in your heart, and then you will be equanimous. Once you're equanimous, you're kind of balanced on the head of a pin. You stay in that equanimous state. All kinds of stories and things arise, but you don't grasp at anything. You just rest in an easy, open, lucid, effortless, simple. There's nothing to do. We sit in the middle, we watch, and we see. Our awareness is spacious, we're at peace, and we can enter this effortless state anytime. It's easy to enter equanimity if you just are ready to let go of all this stuff for a little while. I like the two images that are often used in the practice. One is you sit at the water hole and you watch all the animals who come to drink, but you don't run after any of them. You just watch. And the other image that I've always liked, you take that one seat, take the one seat in the middle of the room, and you watch everything that comes in the 4 windows, the 5 windows of the senses, and the 6th window, the door rather, which is the mind, and you just watch. You don't run after anything. The Buddha said, don't take any wooden nickels. I don't think he used that phrase, but he said, don't believe anything that you haven't verified for yourself. So one of the things, there's a couple things in Buddhism I haven't verified. One of them is reincarnation. I don't know anything about that. So that's like on the table, I wonder. But the other one is nirvana. I've never verified nirvana. I've never verified that there is a permanent place without suffering. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just saying I haven't verified it. So, but what I have verified is the state of equanimity. And many teachers, including Trinity Bernhard, believe that our cumulative time spent in a state of equanimity is nirvana, that equanimity is nirvana, that it's not permanent. This is life on earth. We will always have some suffering, but we have these moments of equanimity, moments of awakening, and they are our nirvana. And those are the moments that transform us. So I think that's a really interesting idea. So John Travis taught that once you have equanimity, you can practice compassion, that it's the second one to try for. So he said, start with forgiveness when you want to experience compassion. And you must start with forgiveness for yourself. Because isn't forgiveness a kind of equanimity? It's a kind of letting go of hurt, letting go of some story of hurt and pain, and just letting it go and forgiving. So there's kind of an equanimity in forgiveness. So it makes a good second step. And then once we are able to forgive ourselves, we can reach out to forgive others, someone who hurt us. Can we reach out to forgive all the people who disagree with us? All the people we see as misguided? All the people in that other political party? How can they be in that party? How can they be so misguided? Can we think about that with equanimity? Can we understand that from where they're coming from, whatever their life was, whatever their suffering, whatever insight they may have that we don't have, but that's been their path. Can we forgive them instead of being angry? And then it can go further. How about the dictators around the planet, the harsh rulers, those who make war? Can we see them as beings who are suffering and who will only heal through compassion? It's so easy to get angry at those who make war. When we watch the news, we get so angry. And we may wish those people to suffer because we have so much outrage at the harm they do. So we want to do harm as well. But that's not compassion. That's falling off the wagon. So because hatred, we know hatred by love alone is healed. So we see their suffering. One thing to understand is that compassion is not the same as condoning bad behavior. The behavior is still very unskillful, but the person is not the enemy. The person is just suffering. After compassion, we can move on to loving kindness, says John, because loving kindness, friendliness, is compassion for all people, not just people who are suffering. So can we send friendliness out? The word metta. We can send friendliness to others. I think of this kind of as a warmth. Can we send this warmth to ourselves, to others? One thing about metta is that it's not, all of these states, they're not dualistic. It's a state of being that you enter. Maybe you start with yourself, you move on to another person, and you move on, you keep growing, expanding, friends, family, and you enter a state of metta and you hold it. But in a state of metta, it's impossible to feel kindness and friendliness for one person and not another, because metta is universal. It's not dualistic. So in metta, you feel this kindness and friendliness towards all beings. I just want to talk a little bit about the relationship between mindfulness practice and the Brahmaviharas. In mindfulness practice, we learn to concentrate, we follow our breath, and the power of that is that it helps us to calm down and to slow and to be in the moment. But one of the very big things that we do in mindfulness practice is learn not to judge. Whatever happens, we don't pronounce it good or bad. It just is. And that is equanimity. The culmination of insight practice is this same kind of equanimity. As we learn not to pass judgment on an unpleasant sensation in your foot, you're also learning not to pass judgment on someone who behaves badly. We're learning to reserve judgment in both practices. And so the insight practice prepares us to move into the heart practices because we learn not to judge. Finally, John said we can practice joy in all forms, open-heartedness. We may feel happy and we can let our happiness turn into joy. We understand the suffering of the world, but we feel the depth of our compassion and connection to all these people. And this brings joy. This connectivity brings joy and contentment to us. Say a couple more things. Traditionally, Buddhist development was seen as having two wings, the two wings of the bird of awakening, and they are wisdom and compassion, and they're inseparable. So as we meditate, we begin to see things more and more as they are. We learn not to imagine the future, not to dwell on whatever we imagine the past was, but to stay right in the present, to see what is happening here and now without judgment, to be with things as they are. So this is the wisdom practice. We see that there's suffering, we see that there's impermanence, and much of what we take for the self is a kind of illusion. That's wisdom, one of the wings of the bird of awakening. Compassion is the other wing of the bird of awakening. So just as I was saying, the insight practice trains us to be able to do the heart practices. And we learn how to open our hearts and how to enter these wholesome states of being, skillful states that are much more apt to lead us to happiness than to suffering. I just want to make one last point, and this is a point that I first heard from Sylvia Boorstein. And Sylvia, a Spirit Rock teacher, one of the founding teachers, says that mindfulness always includes the Brahma Viharas. Mindfulness is not just being present, but it's being present with warmth and goodwill. And I think that's been an amazing realization for me recently, and it's kind of the motive thought behind this whole talk. That I used to think the most important thing was being present, but now I'm thinking the most important thing is being present with kindness, being present with warmth to what you're present for. A lot of this started a talk I gave a few months ago about mindfulness of the body. And I talked about having warmth for the body, understanding that the body is innocent. So many of us hate our bodies and we're so harsh on our bodies. So I that's where that idea started to come for me, that to be mindful of the body requires having warmth and kindness for the body. So now I'm thinking to be mindful of anything requires the warmth and kindness towards whatever you're being mindful for. Okay, really, truly my last point. I think that we're all born different. Every parent knows that some children have a happy, peaceful temperament and they don't cry or fuss, and other babies are fussy and difficult to calm down. So not only are we born with nature giving us a certain kind of inclination to happiness, but then from the minute we're born, life starts happening and experiences come into play and everything changes. Is our mother warm? Do they welcome us into the world? Are our parents withdrawn for some reason? So right on day one, so many conditions are coming into play that will affect our hearts for our entire lives. And we all have suffering because our parents had suffering, and there's just a world out there, and that's the first noble truth. So, children know everything. There's no secrets from children, not on an emotional level. But the point that I want to make is that whatever heart you have right now, your heart can grow. Our hearts can always become more open, more kind, more full, more loving. We can develop, the heart practices develop the capacity of our hearts for kindness and caring. So that's really what this talk is about. So I love to open this up for discussion. And you guys are welcome to unmute yourself and speak freely. I'm going to go back into gallery view. I'll unmute everybody just to encourage you to. Oh, I can't unmute you. I can only ask you. Well, you can unmute yourselves if you want to.
So that's really a really great view of the Brahma Viharas. That a lot of that was new to me too.
Good.
And one part that really it is interesting is, you know, that you say mindfulness has inherently has equanimity, and I see that's really true. And in Tibetan practice, the insight practice that I've learned and practiced in the Tibetan tradition is Mahamudra. And Mahamudra, when you're practicing in that state, in a certain level of openness, and compassion is inherently there. It's part of that, just inherently. So that's kind of interesting.
Very.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And that's my experience with it too. When I really get concentrated and empty, compassion is there. It's my heart always opens in that way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you say a little more about Mahamudra? Is there any way to say some basics?
Is it's in some Tibetan traditions, it's called Mahamudra, and in others, in the Nyingma tradition, it's called Dzogchen. So they're what's known as the insight practices, and they're about really sitting on the chair with everything open in a restful place, and becoming completely open to all experience, and that a certain time you begin to feel this insight into the nature of emptiness, I guess I would say. I don't know, it's complicated to put in words for sure, but it's that practice to obtain that state.
Thanks, that's very helpful.
I like focusing on the heart practices because I need it. I grew up in the military, and everything was pretty black and white. So the society on a whole is that way, dualistic and right and wrong. And so the pressure on the self all the time is pretty strong. So learning how to let go of those thoughts and being with the heart, giving room for that is the only way I can find to heal myself, to become more whole.
Yeah, I had a stepfather in the military, and I think it's a pretty profound, difficult influence for me. We lived on Army base for a while. Did you live on an Army base?
Navy.
Navy.
Yeah, I lived on a lot of them. We moved around every couple years.
Yeah. And it's a very, well, it's not the most Buddhist of cultures, is it?
No, because you're so externally motivated. You know, you're not, you've got a job and a duty and a responsibility, and it, when your dad's in the Navy, it's not about you, it's about his job, and everything you do reflects on him.
Mm. Interesting.
So there's no internal it's just following orders.
Right. Following
It's
orders.
hard to support oneself under those conditions.
Yeah. And just living in an arm of war, we lived in an arm of war. And that colors everything, I think.
Yeah, it's certainly not about love and compassion and equanimity or sympathy.
Right.
It's about denying most of that.
It's not about individuality either. I mean, you wear a uniform, and you better be pretty uniform too.
Yeah, there's a hard to love when you're full of shame.
Mm.
And there's a basis of punishment involved. My dad was constantly concerned about anything going wrong.
Mm. Thanks so much for sharing that. You kind of gave me some new understanding about my own experience too.
Yeah. Good.
I'm going to write a new chapter in my book.
Is your book about yourself?
Totally. It's autobiographical essays, and I had about 30 of them, and they were all in different files. I didn't know how they went together. I just wrote what I felt like writing about. And just the last 2 weeks, I've got the whole book. I mean, I'm not kidding. I've got it in a loose leaf notebook, everything printed, all the chapters with tabs and everything. I got a book.
Wow.
Damn it. I'm so proud of that. Yeah.
Oh my, the second one you wrote, right?
My
Three.
third one. I have my smuggling book,
Mm.
and then I have my book about my grandmother, about immigrants, about my grandmother as an example. And so this would be the third one.
Okay,
Yeah.
congratulations. What a big feat.
I'm so excited about it. I'm in a writing group, and we all had pieces, and we designed a way. Each person got a 4-hour meeting just for their book, and we designed a way to you brought out every piece on a 3x5 card, and everybody got copies, and we shuffled all the cards for 3-4 hours, and at the end I had a book. So it was very exciting. I'll let you know if I find a publisher.
Yeah, great talk. It really flowed nicely. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Have you worked at all with the Brahma Viharas? Do you like doing metta?
I haven't much, no, but definitely is something that could be done.
Could be done.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I recommend. And you can just, start with the mettas at the end of each sitting group and kind of try to enter in more fully, like it's a state of mind rather than just a passing emotion, and see if you can find the path to, bring that into your own meditations at the end, or even the beginning. I think sometimes going into a state of metta at the beginning of the meditation is a really good idea. But
thank you.
It's half the path, and yet I always marvel that we have our hour-and-a-half meetings, and our hour and a half sitting groups, and we spend 30 minutes sitting and 4 minutes on metta. Maybe it should be the other way around. But I guess we're just not ready for that. We need to get the mindfulness practice and the insight practice down, which takes a long time. So it's because we're beginners, I guess.
I love the expansion in the metta. It kind of reminds me of being a kid when I went to church, and some of the hymns just felt so expansive. If you just let yourself go out into the world, into the universe, like Superman, you know, just let it go. Let all
Yeah.
that love flow. It feels so good.
Yeah. I was thinking about this today, and that, Mark and I have been talking about maybe setting up an affinity group is a thing Mountain Stream is doing, and you can have a little 3 or 4 week group and read something together and talk about a topic that you might want to invite others to share. So Mark and I have been talking about doing one on the jhanas, which are, concentration practices that don't have much to do with the heart practices in a way. At least that's how I'm thinking about them, because it's just today. Because what happened to me was I met this teacher, Lee Brasington, and I did a lot of retreats with him because he taught the jhanas, and they just were so magical for me. They were so such a wonderful new level of meditative state, but they weren't about the heart practices. And so I wonder what it would be like if I'm feeling, now that I've resigned from a lot of volunteer jobs, Mark, since I fell down, I volunteered from about half of what I was doing, because I realized I fell down and broke my hip because I was rushing around because I had overextended myself. So I really cut back. But I think I could do a 3-week affinity group, Mark, if you're still interested.
Oh, I'm still interested.
Because we have Lee Brasington's book, and we could read some chapters of that and talk about it. And did I send you that book? Do you have that? Oh, no, I sent you the other book.
I have it, yeah.
But it would be interesting. It'll be interesting to explore them again and see how they fit with what I now think of as so important, being the heart practices. Yeah, I'm not
there's
sure
a
how
lot
it
of
fits.
there's a lot of YouTubes too that we could use as a resource.
Great. You'll have to tell me more about them. Diane,
Yeah, I'd be interested in learning more.
you would too. Good. I think we might get quite a group.
Mhm.
I'm back. I'm ready to. I had written it off because it was just too much. But now I've got more time.
That's great.
And it wouldn't be a long-term commitment. So.
Right.
All right, I'm putting it on my list.
How's your hip?
Oh, I'm walking around practically without a cane now. I moved to the cane about 10 days ago from the walker, and now I forget the cane. So that's a good sign. And I'm driving, and I'm doing everything. I don't need anybody watching me or worrying about me. Stu can go away backpacking, whatever he wants to do now. I wouldn't let him out of the room for the first. I was so frightened of falling down again. Apparently people have hip replacements. And if you just had a hip replacement because your hip was bad and you scheduled it, you have one kind of recovery. But if you get a hip replacement because you fell, all the social workers and nurses and home health aides that came to visit me for 3 or 4 weeks, they told me people who fall are terrified of falling.
Yeah, I recorded it.
People who fall are so scared of falling. So I was so scared of falling again that it's starting to fade, thank goodness. But it was interesting to know that it's not true of everybody. It's only if you fell, if you had a bad fall.
Had to get back up on the bike, huh?
Yeah,
Kind of hard to do at our age.
yeah. Well, I had a great walking program going. And my walking friends Susie Ford was here for a couple of minutes. She's one of them, and another friend, Constance, and we walk a couple times a week at the cemetery. And now they're coming to my house. And so last time I walked about 30 feet. Tomorrow they're coming and I'm going to walk about 60 feet. And each day they come, I'm going to walk a little more. So I'll be back walking soon.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Why do you choose the cemetery? Is it have good little mellow hills or is it flat or?
Oh, it's got hills. I'm out of breath on one of them, definitely.
Hmm.
But it's a nice paved walkways. Actually, you can people drive on them, and it's very pretty and quiet. It's behind the Nevada Street Post Office up there, up the hill there. There's another cemetery that's the historic one in Auburn, but it's kind of doesn't have good surface to walk on so much.
Right. Good to
Yeah.
know. Thank you. Good. Glad you're recovering well.
Thank you so much. Well, it's getting to be, does anybody have anything else they want to share? I don't want to cut anybody off. I haven't heard from everybody quite. Barbara, anything strike you tonight?
I'm just soaking it in.
Great.
I feel like I have no practice when I listen to you.
What do you mean?
I haven't done much formal practice for a very long time, but these teachings and beliefs of Buddhism to me are correct, and I know that I follow them in some sense, but there's very little formal managing my ego, for lack of a better phrase.
Well, there may not be, maybe as we get older, the formal practice, it's more a living practice. I don't know. But I think the living is a long time ago, I thought that we lived so that we could meditate better. But now I don't think that anymore. I believe we meditate so that we could live better. So I think living is the thing, and living with the precepts and living with the values that you believe in.
Yeah.
Not saying practice is not important. I'm just saying it's there when it's there.
Yeah. Well, it's been interesting. I moved here from my old place. I'm in Lake Logwood now. I was outside Grass Valley before, and I moved in March of 2020, just when the pandemic was becoming a real thing. And so I basically hunkered down for the rest of 2020 here, mostly by myself. And it's actually only been this year, since Christmas this year, that I felt like I was actually out in the community in any sense at all, meeting the neighbors and basic stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's all been kind of strange.
Yeah.
And I just have this 18-month period of just kind of me in my house,
Yeah, moving at the same time as the COVID started had to be quite a different, even more isolating experience. Yeah. But I think you live in a wonderful community. I love that community. I spent a lot of time there. So
yeah, it's interesting. It's nice.
It's nice.
Friendly.
Barbara lives in Lake Wildwood.
It's interesting to be in a place that's on one level so controlled. They had this governing body and get a newsletter every week about what they're doing. The manager guy's been saying, so disheartening when people come to meetings and yell at each other. That's not how we're supposed to do, And it's part of the times, but it's just a whole different perspective on where you live. But it's got a lot of advantages for me because there's people around. If I fall and break my leg, at least somebody might get me to the hospital.
Good. I'm glad you're safe there.
So, but I think it's a good place for me right now. And it is very pretty, very well designed physically, I think.
Beautiful.
It's kind of interesting to soak some of that up.
I wish you well.
Thank
Wish
you.
you well there.
And at least I've learned how to turn my mute button on and off. And so that's one thing.
Well, should we just do a little metta? And I'll lead a little metta and then we can close. So coming back into a meditative posture, sitting up straight, trying to have the spine straight and the neck and the head up there on top of the spine, and just kind of feeling the whole body, feeling the air in the room, having a sense of place where you are, and just bringing attention to the area of the heart. I always like to put my hand there, and because the heart feels like the center of the Brahma Viharas. They really feel like they happen in my heart. And apparently there's some research now that shows they do. It's not all just the brain. The heart is also smart, very smart. So just feeling in that area, if you can, bring a little friendliness into your heart and just feel it for a minute. It can be friendliness for yourself. Just all the things that are wrong with you, we don't care about that right now. You know you have some wonderful qualities, and you've done some wonderful things, and just appreciate yourself. Appreciate the opportunity you have in this lifetime to be you, of all things. Such a miracle, an individual, not like anybody else. And just send some warmth and kindness to yourself. Appreciation. Breathe into the heart. And now let's expand that a little bit. And in your mind's eye, think of one person who you care for very much, or it could be a baby or a child or even an animal, someone or some being who's easy to love, easy to care for. And hold that person in your heart. And let's send this warmth and kindness and good wishes to that person. May they be happy. May they be healthy. May they be peaceful. May they be safe from inner and outer harm. May they awaken. And just sending that warm, kind feelings. Now, in your mind's eye, that one person, you see them, and surround them with everybody in your friends and family, everybody you love. Bring them all into the picture. And it's a big party, and everybody has champagne, and they're toasting you and waving to you and smiling and laughing and having a good time. And you send them your good wishes, your best wishes for them to be happy. Everyone you love, may they be happy. May they be healthy. May they be peaceful. May they be safe from inner and outer harm. And may all my friends and family, everyone I love, may they awaken and be free. Okay, let's keep growing this group. How about bring in, you don't have to visualize them so much as just kind of feel the area of your kindness can grow outside your body now. Fill your whole body. Fill your whole body with this kindness, this golden glow of love and kindness. And then let it go outside your body, fill the whole room, and let it go outside your house and include the neighbors and on one side and the other side and across the street and up and down the street and your whole neighborhood. And let it grow and grow and just start to fill the state and the West and the continent. Let this beautiful feeling of kindness towards all these people, hold all these people in your heart with every good wish you can bring, growing, growing, growing out into the ocean, across the continent, the East Coast, the Atlantic, and then just wrap around the world. Asia, Africa, Europe, North Pole, South Pole, hold this whole planet in your heart. And 8 billion people, your heart's big enough to hold all of them and wish them well. And beyond this planet, whatever beings there may be, seen and unseen, known and unknown, born and to be born, may all beings everywhere be happy. May they be healthy. May they be peaceful. May they be safe from inner and outer harm. And may all beings everywhere awaken and be free. May it be so.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night.
What a nice night. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Stay
Good night.
well.